I think probably we are quorate. I think probably most. Oh, Jeffrey's home from school. There we go. We'll let him in. Okay, so I will just mute you all for a second or two. There we go. Right. Boker Tov to everyone. I want to dedicate this shiur to the memory of a grandfather of three of us, whose yortzeit is today. Marcel, Jeffrey, and myself have a mutual grandfather, Yaakov Ben Asher is what we thought his name was until Marcel did amazing work as part of his even more amazing work that he's done in Romania with uncovering births and deaths and the history of Romanian Jews, not just Jews either, by the way. One day I'm going to get him to give us a talk on it, but he's a bit shy, so he's been resistant so far. But anyway, recently, not that long ago, it came to light that actually our grandfather, who we thought was called Yaakov ben Asher, was actually called Yaakov ben Asher Tzvi, because the gravestone that Marcel found showed that his father's name was Asher Tzvi, not just Asher, and we never knew that. I, as it so happens, am called Yaakov Tzvi, and the Yaakov, of course, is after this particular grandfather. It's Jeffrey's name as well. He's also named after that grandfather. The Tzvi of my name is actually from my other grandfather, from my mother's name. But as it so happens, it turns out that it's also part of the name of my great-grandfather. So I was rather pleased to find that out as well. So it is 80 years today, 80 years today, and since our grandfather passed away at the very tender age of 51 years, just about 9 months before my father's bar mitzvah. So my father was in his year of Avelut when he had his bar mitzvah. And truth be told, my father and his sister, that's Jeffrey and Marcel's mum, never recovered from the death of their father. From what I can gather, he was a most remarkable man. Just looking at the achievements that he made from the time that he came to the UK at the age of about 18, I think, was he? Maybe a bit older. 21. He was 21. And the 30 years that he lived in the UK, what he achieved in that time was quite remarkable. So I often wonder how our family would have been different had he not died at such a young age. And I think it would have been a really tremendous difference, actually. My son-in-law, Meds, who some of you know, likes to play a game around the Shabbos table. And he says to people, right, you've got one evening to spend with anybody you would like from history. Who would it be? And many people say Moshe Rabbeinu or Menachem Begin or Winston Churchill or what have you. The one person that I would spend that evening with, if I had that choice, would be my grandfather, because I would love to really get inside his head and know what kind of a person he was. Because if only half the stories that we three have heard are true, then he was a very tremendous person. And I dedicate this shiur to his memory, Yaakov ben Asher Tzvi. Okay, so let's do some learning.
Did he start Lieberman's on Regent Road? Was that his start?
He did. That's absolutely correct. Yes,
I remember going in there many times with my dad to see him, probably, maybe, or see him. I remember.
Well, I don't. It wouldn't have been to see him, Johnny, because he died 80 years ago.
No, it wouldn't have been to see him.
But yeah, that was their place. He started that off. That's correct.
Yeah, I remember.
Marcel was just a little baby when he died, and I'm sure he doesn't remember him. But that's why Marcel's not named after him, because he was a little baby when he died. Jeffrey was then named after him, and then I was named after him some years later. Okay, so we have made progress. We are at the bottom of page 8b, page 45, if you are following in the Steinsaltz Gemara. And I'll just put it on the screen for you. Here we go. There we are. Right. So we're over here. Now, let me remind you, as if you could possibly forget, the subject that we're talking about. We are talking about how many judges are required for a case of the Motzi Shem Ra, the defamer, the person who accuses his new bride of not being a virgin on their wedding night. There was a dispute between Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim, the sages, as to how many judges have to be involved in this case. Rabbi Meir's view, I will remind you, is that we require 3 judges because this is a monetary case. It is not a case of capital punishment. It's a matter of monetary compensation. We're either talking about the husband trying to get out of paying the ketubah, or if it turns out that he is in fact a Motzi Shem Ra, he is in fact a defamer, then he has to pay 100 shekels, which we worked out was an absolute fortune, in compensation for slander. So it's a monetary case, and as we know from our Mishnah, which is from all those months ago, Dinei Mamonot Bishlosha. That's how we started this whole business back in November 2019. The monetary cases are judged by 3 judges. So Rabbi Meir is the one who says 3 judges. The Chachamim, the sages, say no, this may turn into a capital case, because if indeed there will turn out to be witnesses to this woman's adultery prior to the wedding and after the betrothal, then she will be liable for the death penalty, and therefore we start out with 23 judges in the first place. We then had, if you remember, we then had 2 opinions as to what it was that the dispute was about. Ula said, we were worried that there may be gossip. There may be, once we start hearing this case of the Motzi Shem Ra, somebody will come along and say, well, actually, me too. I actually know that this woman's an adulterer because I witnessed it. And then what starts off as a monetary case ends up being a capital case. So Ula says that the dispute between Rabbi Meir and the sages is based on whether we take into account that there may come along witnesses at a later date. Obviously, the sages says, well, they might, and therefore we better start with 23 judges in the first place. And Rabbi Meir says, nah, we don't have to worry about that. This is a monetary case, and it stays a monetary case until such other time that it isn't. Rava, on the other hand, he was the one that said, no, the issue is not one of whether what they call gossip, whether new witnesses will come along. What we're worried about is the honor of the judges. So if it turns out that we have to dismiss certain judges because a monetary case becomes a capital case or vice versa, then that won't look good on those judges. People might think that they were disqualified for some negative reason. So in that case, we're not going to take a chance, and we'll start off with 23 judges in the first place. That's Rava's opinion. Now, as is the Gemara's wont, they try to narrow down the situation so that there is as little dispute as possible. So we try and find agreement between all the parties, except for one tiny little narrow case. The reason for that is that if we can narrow it down, the disagreement, to one tiny little case, then we can say that there is agreement on the halacha on all the other cases. And that's really where we're going with this. It's not that we are really interested in this obscure case that they may disagree on. We're more interested to narrow down the disagreement so that the opposite can happen. In other words, we can widen the agreement. That is the technique of the Gemarah throughout the whole of Shas, is to try and widen agreement and narrow down disagreement. So we have had so far, if I'm not mistaken, 3 different strange cases which various people have put up as the case which they disagree upon. One was that it was the witnesses didn't give the proper warning as to the types of punishment that this woman might get. We spoke about this last week, and we touched upon the 4 different methods of execution. And then David Marks kindly sent out the gory details, or at least a summary of the gory details. Thank you for that. In anticipation that we'll have forgotten it all by the time we get there in 8 years' time. So that was last week's case. Now we get another case. And we're over here on the screen, Rav Papa, right at the bottom of 8b. Rav Papa says, Rav Papa Amar, Rav Papa says, Hacha, this is the case we're dealing with. This is based upon the previous case. Remember, the previous case was the woman who was given a warning, but was not told what punishment she was going to get. Yeah. And there was a machloket in the Braita, Usha kol chayvei mitot shebatara ein mamtitim otom ela be'eda ve'edim v'hatra'a. You need warning, va'ad sheyodi'uhu shehu chayav mita be'bet din. And she has to be told that she is going to be put to death by the bet din. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, he was the one that said, ad sheyodi'uhu, he, or in this case she, needs to be informed be'eza mita hu nerag, which type of death penalty she's going to get. That was last week's case. Rav Papa builds on that to give us his opinion, and he says, Hacha, this is the case. It's getting narrower and narrower as we go along. Be'isha chavera askinan. Chavera. What's a chavera? What's a chaver?
Female chaver.
Yes,
female chaver.
A female chaver, that's right. Chaver, and what does chaver mean, Johnny?
One who is knowledgeable, a chaver. Very knowledgeable in everything. Not a rabbi. Not a rabbi, maybe.
You've jumped a few guns there. You're right, of course, but you've jumped a few red lights. And I want to build it. I want to build up to that. What does the word chaver usually mean?
A friend.
Friend.
A friend. That is correct. Chaver is a friend. Chavera is a female friend, a girlfriend even. So on the face of it, we're saying this is a woman who is a friend. So that can't be right, can it? It doesn't make any sense. So we have to understand what the word chavera means in this context. A chavera is, let's have a look over here in the Steinsaltz note, which says it very nicely. Those of you who are on my screen, it's at the top right hand corner. Those of you who are in the book, it's on page 45. The chaver mentioned here is a member of a society or a movement called the Chaverim, which was active during the period of the Mishnah and thereafter. Let's just stop there for a moment. There are organizations today in most from communities, Manchester being one of them, and I'm familiar with the people who run it, and there are organizations called Chaverim. And what do you think that the Chaverim in Manchester and these other places do?
Lots of charitable work behind the scenes.
They help people with all sorts of different things.
They help people out. They are basically if I can use this expression, the Good Samaritans. So when you get locked out of your car, you call Chaverim, and the Chaverim in Manchester, and I suspect in most of the strictly religious communities, the people that do all these kind acts are in fact the naughty boys, the boys who were not the greatest learners in school, the ones who were always playing hooky, the ones with a bit of character to them, and they were the Chaver man. Okay, they were the people, and of course they're the ones that know how to break into a car. So when you get locked out of your car, you call Chaverim, and in no time at all, they will have you into your car, having done some various little tricks that they've learned along the way. So these groups called Chaverim, which exist today, are generally run by really top guys who very often, and this is my very, very wide experience, these were the boys that were written off in school as being either naughty or useless learners, or not destined for greatness. And what they do, and I'll also tell you, there's a group in Manchester called Misaskim, who are the most unbelievable group of boys. They tend to be the same people. These are the people who help people out with burials and with Shiva and organizing things. And during the Corona period, they are angels, absolute angels, these people, and almost every single one of them that are running running these things. Same with Hatzalah. All of these organizations are run by many of these boys, were the ones that were dismissed as really not very valuable in school. And there's a message there. The message is that there is a role for everybody. Not everybody's an academic. There is a role for everybody, and these people are absolutely valued and vital members of our communities, and they are to be praised to the highest possible level. That's the Chaverim that exist today. Now, the group of Chaverim that were over here were really quite a different set of people altogether. These Chaverim here, as Ravi Steinsaltz says, the Chaverim were those who accepted upon themselves in a special ceremony to observe the code of the society, which consisted of the meticulous observance of the halachot of separating trumot and ma'asrot, tithes, and of ritual purity, that's truma and tahara, which most ordinary people treated more casually. So quite the opposite of what I've just described from today's Chaverim. I don't know whether there's an irony there in the name of today's group of Chaverim friends, but the Chaverim, the group of Chaverim in the time of the Mishnah, these were particularly pious people who took it upon themselves to keep the spiritual mitzvot of Trumot and Tuma and Tahara to a very high degree. Now, generally speaking, therefore, these Chaverim would be people who had a very high knowledge of halakha. And it is to this that Rav Papa is referring, and we'll come back to that in a minute.
Johnny?
So, yes.
It was on your point about Chaverim, and I don't know, this has got nothing to do with Gemarah at all, but it was just, I thought this was very interesting that there is a group here in Israel, not in Israel, I'm in England, Yedidim, operating in Israel. And isn't Yedidah or Yedidim also friends? And
Yedid means beloved, that's right.
Yeah, and they're also friends. Well, all I know is that a friend of mine was driving along and a tire burst, and she called these Yedidim, and they came and sorted out her burst tire. And they're available if anybody here in Israel needs to have assistance in the same way. I thought that was interesting because I didn't know that. I'd never heard of the group.
I've never heard of them either here, but that's exactly the same thing and a very similar name. Julia will, I'll give Julia some homework, find the number for Yedidim and we'll send
I'll
it out.
Forward it. I've got
and we'll forward it, and everybody should put the number of Yedidim in your mobile phones, and God forbid you should need any help with anything, you can call Yedidim and they will come and help you. Thank you for that, Julia. So the Chaver
what is a Chaver today, Johnny? Excuse me, Johnny. What is a Chaver?
Coming to that in a minute, Johnny. Coming to Chaver. So the Chaverim of our Mishnah here were people who were particularly careful about halakha. Now, what Johnny is referring to is a title, an honorary title, which is given out to people in the in many communities, and I'll come to it in a minute which communities. It's a title called Chaver in the Ashkenazic pronunciation, Chaver, or Chaver in the Sephardic pronunciation, although it doesn't exist in Sephardic communities. And that is an honorary title given to somebody who has contributed massively to that particular community, and it is not something which you can apply for. It's something which is it's an honor which is bestowed on a people. Now, from my own community in Manchester, I can only think of two people that I can think of. I'm sure there's lots more, but only two people that I can think of who were bestowed with the title of Chaver. One of them is somebody that we mentioned last week, and actually we've mentioned on several occasions, and that is Rebbe Balkin, the famed teacher who told us that we weren't allowed to do any shmucheling with our laning. And Rebbe Balkin was given the title of Chaver in Manchester, and the only other person I know that was given it in Manchester was Mordechai Weiss. I don't know if Johnny, if you know any other people who've given that title in Manchester.
Michael Hammelberger's father, who came from Germany, was Chaver. Shimmy Pine in our shul,
okay.
And Moshe Gross, who I went to the ceremony 2 years ago, he became a Chaver. Given by the Beth Din, I think. I think it's given by the Beth Din.
So it's a very rare title. Did Michael Hammelberger's father bring that title with him from Germany?
Yeah, I always knew him as a Chaver, Dr. Hammelberger.
Right. Now that's interesting, because that's interesting. And I want to show you this, that I did a little bit of research on this title of Chaver because it interested me. It's a digression from the Gemarah, but the Gemarah digresses all over the place, so I don't see why I shouldn't. Here, I'm going to show you this screen now. There we go. That gentleman there is a man called Strauss. I can't remember his first name now. But anyway, he is a Chaver. Now, his son, Norbert Strauss, wrote this article about the title Chaver, which I learned quite a lot from. And it turns out that the title of Chaver is the origin of it is a very limited, specific community in Ashkenaz, in Germany, the Breuer community, which are the absolute 100% pure Yeckers. You've heard that expression, Yeckers. By the way, I'll ask you in a moment, but don't tell me just now. I'll ask you in a moment if you know why these German people are called Yeckers in a minute. But the Yeckers, the Germanic Yeckers community of Breuer, they were the ones who created this title of Chaver. And he writes here, Norbert Strauss writes that the Kehilat Kahaladat Yeshurun in Washington Heights, and then he mentions other Ashkenazi communities such as IRG in Zurich, and here's one that David Marks will know, Golders Green Beis HaMedrash in London, known as Monks. Monks Shul, yes, David, you're familiar with that?
Very familiar.
Yeah, thought you would be. Monks is a 100% Yeckish community, and he quotes it in this article. So much so that in Monks, you actually have to turn the pages over in unison. And if you breathe out of sync, then you don't get an aliyah. But anyway, so that's and these are and then also he says there are German shuls in Petach Tikva, Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Jerusalem. So the original title of Chaver, listen, this is really interesting. He says, what does the Chaver title mean? It's a title bestowed upon a man considered worthy by the Rav of the community. It is bestowed upon members of the congregation for worthy activities on behalf of the shul and or yeshiva or community, and who in all respects live up to the Rav's expectations. And then he says one requirement often is that the wife of the honored wears a sheitel. Now that's interesting. He doesn't say that she has to cover her hair, she has to wear a sheitel. And that's because the Yekisha minhag is to wear a sheitel and not just to cover your hair with a hair covering. So this Norbert Strauss writes here, my father was honored by Rav Breuer in Washington Heights, and presumably that's his father there. And consequently, the word Chaver was added to his Hebrew name. There's a chap in our community called Dr. Joe Strauss. I don't know if any of you have met him. I think he might live in the Briga building. And when I called, he came to our shul. He's a member of our shul as well. When I called him up, I noticed his name is Yosef ben HaChaver, somebody or other. I can't remember his father's name. His father was a Chaver. And then when it was his father's yortzeit, and he made a Keren Malei Rachamim for his father was HaChaver so-and-so, Ben HaChaver so-and-so. Really interesting. That must be pretty rare, I would have thought. So this title of Chaver in, if you like, modern times, I was going to say modern orthodoxy, but it's not in modern orthodoxy. It's in Yeckisher orthodoxy. It is a title which is a very high level title, so much so that between Johnny and I, we can only think of about 4 people in our lifetimes in a fairly large Ashkenaz community in Manchester who've had this title bestowed upon them, and so it's a very honored title. If you're interested in it, I can send you the link to this particular article. So that's Chaver today. Interesting that word Chaver can mean somebody who is very particular about the halachot, as we learn in the Gemarah here. It can mean somebody who is honored by the community, and it's a rare honor. And it has this same idea as Yedidim here, the naughty boys who turn out actually to be the jewels in the crown of the community, going around helping everybody out of their sticky situations. So it just struck me as being something that was worthy of spending a few minutes on. Let's go back to the Gemarah.
Can you just refresh, Johnny, we're just going to tell us why Yeckers are called Yeckers.
Oh yes, why Yeckers are called Yeckers. Does anybody know? Anybody know why Yeckers are called Yeckers?
I did know, but I've forgotten.
To do with the name Yecker meaning Jack.
Jacket.
No,
Sure.
a jacket.
The
Who said
clothes they
jacket?
wore. Short jacket,
Yes.
long jackets.
Yes.
Short jackets. Short jackets.
Short
The
jacket.
Yeckers, the Ashkenazic Jews of Germany, refused to wear the long coats which are associated with Eastern Europe and the Hasidic community, particularly the Bekishers and the Kapotas that they wear. The German community, the German Ashkenazic community, found that entire process of bringing Eastern Europe into Western Europe when they came with them within their dress code, they found it an unacceptable practice, and they refused to get involved in that. And they were very proud of their short jackets that they wore, which the kind of jackets that we would still wear today in a suit. If anybody ever wore a suit today, very few of us nowadays wear suits. Leon wears a suit when he comes to shul, don't you, Leon? Or if not a suit, he wears a blazer and slacks. Yes, quite right. Leon keeps up the standards. Anyway, the kind of jacket that Leon wears is the Yecker. The German word for that kind of jacket is a Yecker, and that is why they were called the Yeckers, because of the jackets that they wore, and that they refused to wear the long coats of the Eastern European Jews. So there you are, Johnny. You didn't know that, did you?
No, I didn't.
Good. There you are. So even
Cheltenham
you haven't learned
Crescent, the
anything else
Yeckers.
today, then you've learned about that kind of nonsense. I like to
Cheltenham Crescent is the Yeckers shul, isn't it, in Manchester? Cheltenham Crescent.
Cheltenham Crescent. That's right. Yeah, Cheltenham Crescent. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Cheltenham Crescent is the Yeckers shul in Manchester. Correct. Right. Let's go back to the Gemarah. Let's go back to the Gemarah. Where are we? One sec. Just share the Gemarah with you. My mouse is not playing games. There we go. Right, there we go. There's the Gemarah back. So, Rav Papa says, Hacha, here, we are dealing with a case of an Isha Chavera Askinan. There's that word Askinan. We are dealing with. Estek is a business. Lehitasek in modern Hebrew means to get involved with. So Askinan is a common Gemara word. It means we are dealing with. Hacha, here, Askinan, we are dealing with a case of an Isha Chavera, a woman who is a Chavera, a member of this society of Chaverim that Rabbi Steinsaltz talks about up here on the right-hand side. Now, two things are interesting about this. Number one, that this Chaverim, not necessarily are Torah scholars, but it's assumed that she would have enough knowledge if she's a Chavera to know that the various different punishments are as they are. And therefore, according to Rav Papa, the argument between the Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda here is whether a Chaver or a Chavera needs to be warned about which punishment she's going to get. Because according to one opinion, she already knows because she has a Chavera. If she's a card-carrying member of Chaverim, unlike today's Chaverim, it means that she actually was a very good student and knows the halachot and knows which punishment she is likely to get or is going to get if she does these things, and therefore does not need to be warned. So that's number one thing that's interesting. But more interesting than that, don't you think, is that a woman could be a member of this society of Chaverim, and that there were Chaverot, there were lady members of this organization called Chaverim. I think that's really interesting because one would not have expected to have women in such a holy group back in the day, even today, of course, in Orthodox circles. The women are not accorded halachic status in certainly, well, we just had the first Rabbanit appointed as leader of the community, haven't we, in wherever it is, I think it's, where is it, that place? In somewhere near Efrat, I think it is. Anyway, but that's, yeah, so that's in 2021, and there's a big hoo-ha about that going on. So to think that there was a Chaverah, or there were members of this Chaverim organization at the time of the Gemarah, is, to me, is really quite interesting and entirely refreshing. So something that's worth pointing out as we go along. So Rav Papa says we're dealing here with a Chaverah, a woman who is knowledgeable. She knows what punishments are coming her way. V'kamiflige beplukta to Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda v'Rabbanan. And what we're disagreeing on here, our very narrow case, getting narrower and narrower, where the disagreement is in the following case. It's the case of the disagreement between Rabbi Yossi, the son of Yehuda, and the rabbis. And here comes another Braisa. The Tanya, we've learnt in a Braita. Remember, Braita is the part of the Mishnah that never quite made it, but it still has significant power. Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda Omer. Rabbi Yossi the bar Yehuda says, Chaver ein tzarich hatra'ah. A Chaver does not need to be given a warning. Why? Because he already knows what's going on. Lefi shelo nitna hatra'ah ela lahavchin bein shogeg lemezid. Because the warning is only to distinguish between sins, averot, which were done b'shogeg, by mistake, or b'mezid, deliberately. So there is a concept in halakha of two different types of averah. We read about this and we speak about it in our confessions on Yom Kippur. If you have a look in the vidui of Yom Kippur, we see those two words. We express our remorse for those averot which we did b'shogeg, by mistake, or b'mezid, all those the ones that we did deliberately. So in this opinion, the Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda says the whole point of the warning is to distinguish between a deliberate and an unintentional sin. So, for example, a person is about to do an Aveira, let's say, is about to commit adultery, right? Take our case of the Motzi Shemra case that we're dealing with. These witnesses come along and they somehow or other are about to witness this grievous sin. And they say to the person, you do know, don't you, that you're not allowed to do this? Adultery is a forbidden, al-pi haTorah. The halacha is that this act that you're about to do is wrong. It's asur, it's forbidden. And the person then says, oh, I didn't know. In that case, I won't do it. Or he says, well, thank you very much for the information, but I'm doing it anyway. Once that warning has been given, he can't then turn around, or she can't then turn around and say, oh, sorry, Your Honor, I didn't know that this was forbidden, because the warning was given immediately before the act. So whatever it is, the act that's forbidden, if you have a warning, and this is the opinion of Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda, the point of the warning is to prevent a defense, if you like, of sorry, I didn't know. It was a shogeg, because you get a different punishment altogether for doing an averah b'shogeg, by mistake, as you do for doing it on purpose. So, for example, let's take a more likely example. It's not likely that we're going to have witnesses to the adultery, as we've already said in previous weeks. Let's take the example of Shabbat. Somebody is about to break Shabbat. Let's say writing on Shabbat. somebody's about to write something down on Shabbat, and somebody says to him two things. Number one, do you know today is Shabbat? He might have forgotten, he might have thought it was Sunday. So he says, oh gosh, I forgot it was Shabbat today. Or you might think that's a bit far-fetched, but you know, you can often forget that it's Yom Tov. So, you know, you wake up in the morning and it's a Monday morning. Perhaps you forget what day it is. So you get a warning. Today is Shabbat. Do you know that? Yes, I know it's Shabbat. Do you also know that writing is forbidden? Oh, is it? I didn't know. In that case, I won't do it. Or, yes, I know it's Shabbat. And yes, I know writing is forbidden. And you know what? I'm doing it anyway. So once you've had the warning, you know it's Shabbat, you know it's forbidden, you do it anyway, you then can't turn around and say, I didn't know it was Shabbat, or I didn't know you weren't allowed to do it. It's very clear where you stand in the hierarchy of your Aveirot. Of course, the warning is there to try and prevent you doing it in the first place. So if you are genuine in your not knowing, then you'll be very thankful for the guy reminding you that it's Shabbat. And you think, oh gosh, thanks for reminding me. I almost did an Aveira then. So thank you for that. Or, oh, I didn't know I wasn't allowed to write. I thought it was permitted. Thank you for letting me know. So that's the idea of the warning. Now, of course, if you, the first part could still be relevant to a Chaver. A Chaver may know all the halachot of Shabbat, but he might still forget what day it is. Just because you're a Talmid Chacham doesn't necessarily mean that you know what day it is. You might forget. So the warning of what day it is, that you do know today is Shabbat, don't you, still applies. But what Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda is talking about, Chaver ein tzarich hatra'ah, because of the second bit. He says, you do know, don't you, that writing isn't allowed on Shabbat. You don't need to say that to a Chaver, because he knows. That's according to Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda. We're not told the other side of the story of the Rabbanan, but it's obvious from here that the Rabbanan are the ones that say Chaver tzarich hatra'ah. A Chaver does need a warning, excuse me, let me just turn this off. Over here, Rav Steinsaltz gives us a little bit of halacha here. Every potential transgressor must receive a warning, regardless of his level of scholarship, and he's not punished by the court unless he was forewarned, in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis. So what Rav Steinsaltz is telling us is that we do not go according to the opinion of Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda says a Talmid Chacham, a Chaver, does not need a warning. Then we have this idea of the inciter to idol worship. We talked about that before last week, who does not need complete warning. He gets less of a warning because of the seriousness of his crime. But this case of Rav Papa is that what they're disagreeing on is whether this Chaver, this Chaverah, would require a warning. So now we've got the case so let's go over here. Rav Papa suggests that Rebbe Meir, who is the one that says we need only 3 judges, he is the one that holds that a Chaverah must be forewarned, and therefore this case cannot ever become a capital case, because this is a case where she was not given a proper warning telling her which punishment she was going to get. And therefore, if it's never going to be a capital case, how many judges do we need? In accordance with Rebbe Meir, we need 3, because it is only ever going to be a monetary case. However, the rabbis, according to Rav Papa, would hold like Rav Yossi Bar Yehuda, who says a Chaverah does not need a complete warning. And therefore, in the previous case that was brought where she was given a warning, but not told what punishment she was going to get, according to the rabbis of our Mishnah, not the rabbis of this Brisa, the rabbis of our Mishnah, who says we need 23 judges, it could turn out to be a capital case because the warning that she had was sufficient because she was a Chavirah. She knew what was coming to her because she was a Chavirah. Therefore, she didn't need a complete warning. Therefore, this case of potential adultery could end up being a capital case. And therefore, we're going to start with 23 judges in the first place so that either when the gossip comes or when the honor of the judges, depending on which side you go with, we don't have any problems. So according to Rav Papa, the case is a woman who is a knowledgeable woman, a Chaverah, and Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda is the one that says she doesn't need a proper warning, and that fits in with the Chachamim of our original Mishnah. The Chachamim of this Mishnah, the Rabbanim of this Brisa, fits in with Rabbi Meir of our Mishnah, who says only 3 judges are required. Okay, before we go on to Rav Ashi, who is yet another different case, another narrowing down of the case, are there any questions about Rav Papa's case?
You said at the end of last week, you said, where else do we know Rav Papa from? Isn't it from the Hadran?
Yes, thank you, Michael. Yes, I did say that. The Hadran. Would you like to tell us all what the Hadran is, Michael?
It's what you say when you finish the tractate of the Mishnah.
Yes,
or the Talmud, rather.
Tractate of the Talmud, that's right, of the Gemarah, or a Seder of the Mishnah. There are 6 Sedarim, which is why the Talmud is called Shas. It's short for Shisha Sedarim. And there are, those 6 Sedarim are split into, I think, 183 or 83. How many Masechtas are there, David?
I think it's 54.
54, okay. Why did I think there were 83? I don't know. Anyway, 54, thank you. They're split up into 54 Masechtot. And you say, when you finish a Seder of Mishnayot, or you finish a tractate of Gemarah, we worked it out, didn't we? Leon will be 145 when we finish Sanhedrin. Please God, we will get Leon to say the Hadran at the age of 145 when we finish Sanhedrin. The Hadran is a big honor that when you finish it, you basically, the word Hadran comes from the word Hadar, which is a Aramaic word. Hey and Chet are interchangeable. Dalad and Zayin are interchangeable. So if you interchange Hadar, you get Chazar. What does Chazar mean? Not Chazir. What does Chazar mean? Can't hear you, Avril. You're muted.
To return, to come back.
Correct. Very good. Avril's been paying attention in Ulpan. Lachzor means to return. So Chazar, the Hadran, is what you say at the end of a Masechta, and you say, "We will return to you." You're talking to the Masechet. You're talking to the Gemarah. We will return to you. And then within that whole performance that you say, we talk about Rav Papa, and we talk about Rav Papa's 10 sons. Rav Papa had 10 sons. And in the Hadran, we quote the 10 sons of Rav Papa, and we speak about him in the Hadran. So that is where we see Rav Papa very commonly. Rav Papa was a very common name to see in the Gemarah. And yes, Michael is correct. That's where we will have heard the name Rav Papa many times in the Hadran. Okay, any other comments on this case before we just begin Rav Ashi, and then we can turn over the page to 9a, making rapid progress. Any comments?
Yeah, Johnny, there's
63
Masechtot.
Okay, so I got the 3-bit right. 63. I don't know why I thought there was 8.
I was just counting them, but I'm stopped in the middle.
Okay, we'll rely on David's second answer being 63. Okay, very good. 54, of course. I think you got mixed up with the parshiot, David.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. 54 parshiot. Okay, right. So now then, the Gemara is not finished yet with our case. We're really putting this case through the mangle. Rav Ashi has a go now. Rav Ashi Amar. Rav Ashi says, no, our Mishnah's talking about a different case. Over the page now to Daf Tet Amud Aleph. He says, Da'atru Bey Malkot, Velo Atru Bey Ktala. This is really interesting. So the people doing the warning get a bit mixed up. And they say to this woman who they are about to witness doing the act of adultery, they say, you do know that adultery is forbidden by the Torah, and you do know that you will be punished. But instead of saying you will be punished with capital punishment, and that particular capital punishment that you will get will be strangulation, they make a mistake. And they say, you will receive lashes, malkot. How many lashes will she receive? What is the halacha of malkot? Does anybody know?
49. 49?
No.
39.
Who said 39? Yes, 39. 39. But what should it be? What does the Torah say it should be?
Arba'im.
Arba'im. The Torah says you get 40 lashes. That's why you got a bit mixed up, Johnny. Because actually the Torah says 40, but actually we give 39. Now, please explain this to me. We have a halacha in the Torah which says you shall neither add nor detract from the mitzvot in the Torah. So you are not allowed to take 5 species on Sukkot instead of 4, right? You're also not allowed to take 3 because that is taking less than the Torah. So if the Torah says you have to give 40 lashes, why did the Bet Din only give 39? Why is that not against the halacha that says don't reduce anything from the Torah and don't add anything from the Torah? Why was it 39?
To make sure they didn't go over 40.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
So they didn't kill them.
That's absolutely. Well, yeah. First of all, you had to undergo medical assessment before you got any lashes at all, because the punishment was only given to those who the court doctor. I won't fancy this job at all, by the way. So don't put me forward for it. And anyway, I'm going to be Rosh Bet Din, so I'm going to be Rosh Sanhedrin, so I can't do 2 jobs. So the doctor appointed by the Sanhedrin had to examine the sinner and decide A, whether he was fit to be punished, and B, how many lashes he could take. And let's assuming he was a big starker and he was able to take the full 40. We still didn't get 40 for the exact reason that Julia has said, because you might make a mistake in the counting and you might go over the 40, and that would be very bad because you've given more than his punishment should be. Better that you should give 1 less than potentially 1 more. And again, it reflects, I suppose, the slightly merciful view of the Bet Din that if there's an opportunity to do less than more, then we'll take the opportunity to do less. So that's correct, Julia. That's why we give 39 lashes and not 40. So our case over here of Rav Ashi, we're narrowing it down even further. Yes, she got a warning, and she was told what punishment she gets. Not like Rav Papa, who said she got a warning, but they never told her what the punishment was. But they made a mistake, and they said, you're going to get lashes, and you're not going to, and they didn't warn her that she'll get the death penalty. Now, what's really interesting is that if she then goes to court and she's found guilty, the punishment that she gets is the punishment that she was warned about, not the death penalty, even though normally the death penalty for what she did, the punishment for what she did was the death penalty. However, because she didn't get a warning about a death penalty, then she can't be given the death penalty, because we've already learned, haven't we, that in order for a person to get that punishment, they have to have a warning, and they have to have a full warning. And according to the Chachamim, they have to have a warning even if they are a Chaver or a Chavera, and they have to have the warning about what punishment they're going to get and the correct punishment that they're going to get. You can't even do it if they give them the wrong punishment out. So if she's told that she's going to get lashes rather than being told she's going to get the death penalty, then if she's found guilty, then she will get lashes, assuming she is fit for the punishment. So again,
what happens therefore if they said, well, you'll be stoned? You can't. I think I find it a little bit odd that you'd be punished at all.
Correct. You're right, because stoning is worse than strangulation. So we said last week. What?
In what sense is it worse?
Well, when we get there, you'll see there's a hierarchy. There's a hierarchy. Somebody's decided that it's worse. But as we said a couple of weeks ago, it may be that that particular person has got a particular phobia about stones or strangulation or having his head chopped off or whatever. And had they had the proper warning, they wouldn't have done it. And we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, if you remember. So so unless you're given the correct warning about the correct capital punishment, then you can't get capital punishment. If you're not given a warning about malkut, about lashes, then you can't get malkut either, because you can turn around and say, well, if I'd have known that I was going to get lashes, I wouldn't have done it. Nobody warned me. Nobody told me that I could get lashes. So this case here of Rav Ashi is that the warning was lashes, not that the warning was a death penalty. And let's just finish off the last few lines here of this particular case. The Kamiflegepip looked at a Rabbi Yishmael v'Rabbanan Ditnan. We have learnt in a Mishnah. Now, which Mishnah do you think we've learnt this in? Come on, Julia, you know this. Which Mishnah are they going to quote now? Have a guess.
Presumably the one that says that you need 3 judges for a monetary case.
Correct. Our own Mishnah, our very own Mishnah from November 2019. Rabbi Yishmael v'Rabbanan Ditnan, we've learnt in our Mishnah, Makot, that is lashes, Bishlosha needs 3 judges. Mishum Rabbi Yishmael, Amru, but in the name of Rabbi Yishmael, he said, no, we need Esrim Ushlosha, 23 judges. So according to Rav Ashi, Rav Ashi's case is getting narrower and narrower. Rav Ashi's case is that the rabbis and Rabbi Meir, who disagree about whether we have 3 or 23 judges in our defamatory case, our Motzi Shem Ra case, they are talking about a very specific case where a woman was warned that she's about to commit adultery. You're not allowed to do that. And if you do, you'll get punished. And you'll get punished with lashes. Incorrect, what she was told, but that's what she was told. And the argument of Rebbe Meir and the sages parallels the discussion in our Mishnah between the Rabbanan and Rabbi Yishmael. The Rabbanan say 3, the Rabbi Yishmael says 23. The flip side of the argument of Rabbi Meir and Rabbanan, because Rabbi Meir is the one that says 3 and the Rabbanan says 23. So Rabbi Meir holds that the case of the defamer may be adjudicated by 3 judges because he holds that a court of 3 may administer lashes like the Rabbanan. The dissenting opinion, which holds that lashes may be administered only by 23 judges, also holds that this case must be adjudicated by court of 23 in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yishmael. Okay, so we have now done explanations 4 and 5 of which case our Mishnah was talking about. We're going to see that we haven't yet finished. We'll see. I'll just do the next 2 words. Ravina Amar. Ravina, another one of the Amoraim, is having another go. He says, no, I've got another case that it can be. And we haven't yet finished with our case. So that's what, please God, we will do next week. Any questions about Rav Papa's case or Rav Ashi's case or Chaver or lashes or anything, in fact? Leon?
Yes, sometimes it's referred to as Makot, and sometimes it's referred to as Malkot. How do we justify putting a lamed in there?
Okay, they are 2 completely different words. If you look at Makot, here we are on the screen there. Mem, Kaf, that's the backwards C, Kaf, Vav, Taf, Makot. It's the plural of the word Makeh. Where have you seen that word Makot before?
Makot Bakorot. The smiting of the
Makot
first
What
one.
are the
Yes.
10 plagues?
10 plagues.
10 plagues, Eser Makot. Those of you who have, little ones at your Seder will have heard them singing Eser Makot, Eser Makot, Makot 10. The Mitzrim were punished again and again. That was, I remember my kids coming back from school with that one. Makot are plagues or something that you are struck down with. You are struck down with a plague. Yes, Leon? A plague strikes you. So the word for plague is not a makeh. The word for plague is something completely different. What is the word for a plague? It's the same word that we have for the coronavirus. What is it? What word for plague? David?
Nega.
Nega is a plague, that's right. And also there's another one, pigua. There's also another something that strikes you down. Makeh is basically a striking. We have it in the Torah, Makeh ish aviv imo, a person who strikes his mother or his father, mot yumat, he's put to death. So Makeh is a striking. So it's called Makot. And let's have a look at the word Malkot. There it is here. You can see the lamed is put in there, as you said. But look, it's not a kaf, as in a Makot. It's a kuf. Kuf. Yeah? Malkot is a completely different word. And the origin of that word, I'm not quite sure actually, what the origin of that word was. I'm suspecting that it's the tool, it comes from the tool that it was used. David, can you help me out here? What's the origin of the word Malkot?
You've got the word at the beginning of Sefer Vayikra, Malak, talking about how he plucks off the feather of the bird.
Oh, that's right, yeah, Malika. Malika is with where the Malika, that's right.
Malika
is where the Kohen sort of nips off the head of the bird. It's a way. It's
with
part
his
of the
nail.
with his thumbnail. So
Yeah.
it's some kind of I don't know is the answer. Why Malcot is called lashes? I need to look that up. Macot is definitely from the word to strike. Why is lashes called Malcot? Don't know. We'll find out and let you know. Good question, Leon. Okay, any other questions?
Macot's also the name of the game they play on the beach. They strike the ball with the bat.
Okay, yeah. Is it? Is that what it's called? That
It's
annoying game, which
so.
yeah.
I think so.
Right. Okay. Well, that would make sense. You strike the ball with the bat and annoy everybody around you with the noise. Okay. Right, Johnny Halpin, you have to go.
I'm going to go.
So
Thank
do
you.
I.
Thank you.
So do I. And just what else? Would I have got any announcements? No, I don't think we've got any other announcements. We will see you next week.